I understand and appreciate that concern. It would be a perfect world, all the floodways and floodplains would be specifically delineated. But when you start picking and choosing and enacting provisions of this ordinance, which are targeted, with all due respect, to the oil and gas industry, you're going to invite challenges.
The oil and gas industries are not the only ones I'm targeting, but surely they would want to know where the floodway is before they start bringing a bunch of fill into the floodplain.
You assumed that we didn't delineate a floodway.
Well, I was never shown that you did.
Yeah.
But we won't go there.
Yeah, we don't.
That is my suggestion, that if we're involving development inside a floodplain that has not had the floodway delineated, and if it is a massive multi-acreage development, then I request that we add this in here to have the floodway delineated. I don't see that there's any harm in that. On page 17, part of that paragraph D, a lot of that is new. Again, that it was not part of the original ordinance, so I don't know where that came from. Did that come from the FEMA manual also? That's not a question you can answer. Why did we let Mr. Sneed go home? We should have just tied him to the chair.
I should have had lunch, number one, to tell you honestly. But I will tell you this. I did not have the FEMA book that Mr. Sneed has, so I didn't pull this language from a FEMA book.
Right.
Did it come from the industry?
What is the specific language, Mrs. Hunt?
It's on page 17, it's paragraph D. It says,
This is, you know, I'm having a hard time following this, but I appreciate you providing it in writing because I can go home and read it and relate it specifically to the ordinance.
This is new. This was a new addition from the last floodplain.
What is the specific language?
Within any proportioned floodplain zone, parentheses, zone A, without floodway area, no new construction or development shall be allowed unless it is demonstrated that the cumulative effect of the proposed development, when combined with all other existing and anticipated development, will not increase the elevation of the 100-year flood more than 1 foot at any point. This requirement can be satisfied by utilization of the floodway area where determined. Now, didn't Mr. Sneed talk about changing the language on the 100-year flood?
He did, yeah.
I don't know that we took that. I don't recall.
What is
I don't know, it sort of sounds kind of like the way you speak. No, I'm just
well, hopefully,
Right there it is, section 1,
I'm assuming
3.1A, but
we're
this
still
is
going to be
D.
working with Mr. Sneed, so
new.
hopefully he will. On section 5.2, the basic format.
Well, just back to that point,
Oh, okay.
I want to understand your highlighting here.
Okay.
The red language is what you are suggesting be added,
Yes.
and you're suggesting to strike that which is in the black ink and like the last line.
Right.
This requirement can be satisfied by utilization of the floodway area where determined. Okay, that language in specific I identified to that's what we were talking about earlier with Mr. Sneed when I said I had the pink stickers. I identified that language in 2 places in this FEMA section.
Okay.
And asked Mr. Sneed, what does that mean? Because it seemed to be out of place. It seems to be saying that you can use the floodway area, so I didn't understand it myself, and I asked Mr. Sneed, he didn't understand it. So that was identified as an issue that he was going to ask FEMA, what does this mean?
Good. And then whatever we do here anyway is going to go to them. So on again, section 5.2, which was the basic format. I was not real sure whether you were talking about the basic format of the permit or the permit application. So I inserted or suggested that you insert the word application.
That's well taken.
Okay. I also suggest that you ask for more than just the name and address. I suggested that you ask for the contact information.
What contact information?
It says the basic
Facts.
format should include the name and address of the applicant, the name and address of the owner, and I suggested they put name and address and contact
You
information.
mean like a phone number? Well, as far as the applicant goes, we would have no problem with that. As far as every other person you have to notify, you may not be able to get their phone numbers or email addresses and things like that.
tax records.
Well, no, we have a significant problem developing. Everyone has cell phones. I've done away with my landline. It's great, because no one can find me. Because if I don't give you my cell number, you can't call me. And it is increasingly more difficult for people to find people in that way, unless you're on Facebook and you're surfing the net and you're friending everyone, which I don't do. So it is becoming more of a problem for government to find people because they don't have an index of cell numbers, and hopefully they never will. So, I mean,
As far as the applicant goes, I think that's a good point. I mean, we can give you all the stuff with some contact for an applicant. I think anybody, that's easy to give because it's your information.
I did suggest that you also add the name and address of the adjacent property owners. You would have that, right? Anybody that's going to go to a tax office and pull up the plat.
I
Yeah,
thought that was in there, but I'll take this and closely look at what we have in it, don't have in it. Because it's not controversial. I mean, it's something that will make the document better.
No, adjacent isn't on here in the document.
Well, maybe it's in a different section on the notice provision. Because you're going to get it as part of the application process because you got to serve everybody, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, whatever it is in that provision, it needs to be in there. I don't think we have a problem providing that because we've got to provide the surface owner, the subject property, the adjacent property, and up and down the street if there's a floodplain study. I don't think there's any dispute about that kind of stuff.
On page 22, I didn't understand. Number 2, paragraph B.
FEMA language.
Okay, well, I thought maybe that was a typo. The next to the last line says professional engineer or architect or meet or exceed. I thought perhaps surely they meant professional engineer or architect and meet or exceed.
That probably would violate some grammar rule that's in the little red book. I'll look at it. I'm pretty sure that is FEMA language. But, I mean...
They may not catch an A and an or though, don't they?
Yeah.
I think that's right. I think if you read it, that's the way it should be written.
On page 23, where you talk about section 5.4, and you're saying that the proposals will be reviewed by the floodplain administrator. Do we need a sentence there, sir, that would say, in addition, a review process will be posted and granted to the residents and adjacent residents?
Are you asking if EQT files an application, in addition to Mr. Welling's review of the application packet, that the surface owner would then review it and then get something granted? Is that what you're asking?
No, it was my understanding that once an application comes in to Mr. Wellings and he reviews it, those of us who could possibly be affected by it would also have a chance to review it. So doesn't there need to be a sentence in here that some sort of review process will be posted so that we can review?
I don't know what you mean by that, but the way it's set up is that the applicant, there will be a file at the county clerk, the clerk of the commission, that you can review at any time during public business hours. I don't know what else you want us to do.
If you don't post something, how are we going to have the opportunity to make an objection or review?
It's posted. You're
They're
certain
gonna
that you're going to get notification of it. You come to the courthouse or get a copy of it that way.
Are you suggesting someone that is not a resident of the property, a property owner, surface owner, adjacent, or other properties in the floodplain? You're talking about a citizen that might be miles away from the property, the subject property?
It could be. It's just, this paragraph supposedly just lays out the ABC steps, right? The application and papers have to be submitted to the administrator, and he is going to supposedly review it. And isn't the whole review process by those of us that are supposedly impacted also to be included in this paragraph?
I think that's something you do on your own and then file an objection. And then the objection is considered. Is that what's set up? Yeah. I mean, you do your own independent review, file an objection if necessary. Mr. Wellings considers the objections as part of his determination as to whether floodplain permits should be granted. I mean, I think that's something you do on your own. I don't think that anybody, surface owner or adjacent owner or someone else downstream, gets to sit down with Mr. Wellings and say...
Oh, no, I'm not suggesting a sit down with Mr. Wellings. I'm just saying there's nothing in here that says what used to be known as the community was going to be given the option or the opportunity to review.
You do. It's in a clerk file downstairs. You come to the courthouse and look at it. That's when you can review it. You can do whatever, you can get a copy of it, do whatever you want to do with it. I'm not sure you understand what will happen. We'll file a copy. There are 2 copies that get filed. Dan takes a copy for his own personal use. The clerk will have one downstairs. And I'm sure they're really helpful, and you guys all know that about getting information. Once you get notice of it, you come and get a copy, and then you can review it. That's your opportunity, and you have it.
I don't think we can mandate that you review it.
No, I didn't mean that. Obviously, we're not talking on everything.
She's saying, how are you going to notice the rest of the people?
What?
So they can come in.
Publication, soon, the publication
in the
will be sent out in the
paper.
paper.
It's going
You're
to be,
saying that whole process has been covered in other sections of the ordinance?
Yeah, it's in the paper, it's in the county commission agenda, it's all over the place.
Okay. On page 24, item E, again, is this FEMA wording that says it will take place on a natural grade a significant vertical distance?
Absolutely. I would never dream that up myself.
What? I mean,
I don't know what
who defines what significant is?
Call your congressman. I don't know.
Tennessee said no.
Okay.
I don't mean to be flippant, but it's just, literally, it's evidently highly technical FEMA stuff.
Okay. If you look over on page 28 of the ordinance, where item number 3, to me, that whole paragraph has too many contradictions. You're saying a non-conversion agreement has to be signed stating that the structure will not be changed from the use permitted. And then in the very next sentence you say, but if a change in use is required, blah, blah, blah.
That is referring to structures where they allow somebody to build a basement, say, and say, okay, you can have this basement, you can park a car in this basement, but this basement can never turn into an apartment. Okay, and they say, okay, you can build this basement, but it may be used for parking. Okay, that is a non-conversion agreement. All right, and that is what it is referring to. If you sell that property to the next owner, you gotta let them know, hey, you can't make this into apartments down here. This was built with the understanding that this non-conversion agreement is the understanding that it was built under that it's going to be used for this purpose.
Okay. Well, my biggest argument, I suppose, of the evening was on page 29E, where you had your definition of fill. There is a whole new section there that was not there in the original ordinance. The original ordinance was very specific, no fill will be permitted in the floodway. And now, all of a sudden, here's this new sentence. no spill will be permitted in the floodway unless it's demonstrated through blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, well, and let me just say to you, Mr. Foster brought this up. Sorry to lay it on you, but I also had the same reaction Mr. Foster had the first time I read the FEMA language. There seem to be inherent contradictions between how they define the 4 zones and what you could do, and this one line that says, which is very clear, no fill within the floodway. Because back in F1, in the definition, it says you can put fill in the floodway as long as you meet this standard condition. And I discussed this with Dan Wellings, I discussed it with Kevin Sneed. Now, for example, again, I don't want to get everyone cheering again, but this commission could decide to make a rule that says no fill within the floodway, if they so choose. If they choose not to, then they stand for re-election at some point, for all of you that cheer those comments. Personally, I don't believe that there should be a strict rule, no fill within the floodway, if you can meet the technical requirement or standard that's set forward by FEMA in the F1 zone, which is the definition that we captured from F1 and put it back in this section. I'm losing track of where we're at in the overall ordinance.
Well,
But we also, discussed eliminating the language no fill in the floodway because it was contradictory to the definition of the F1 zone.
Does that clarify anything for me?
absolutely not.
Well, I'm sorry.
I think I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
It's just.
I see no reason for us to deliberately weaken our ordinance. We have an ordinance now that says you cannot put fill in the floodway. I'm not
But
talking about the
I will
floodplain.
say, Ms. Huff, with all due respect, it also says you can put fill in the floodway.
But it says the commission has the power. I mean, I would.
Well, no, I understand that. I don't want to argue that.
No, but I
But
would.
what I'm saying to you is
Protect the
this,
citizens.
that it is inherently in conflict. There's a section that says you can put it in the floodway, there's a section that says you cannot.
Well, let's be-
It's not up for me to decide.
No.
Really, it's not. It's for this commission to decide. That's one
Right,
of the
let me
political
make a point.
decisions they have to make.
You're the commission's attorney because the commission brought you in to help them represent us. Okay? So we would not like to think that you're leaving things open that might harm us.
Believe me,
So-
if you don't like me as the commission's attorney,
wanna
literally
make
a year's
sure
worth of
you're
work on
representing
this thing, I would voluntarily go back to Wheeling and never come back to Dodge.
Well, let's not, I don't think we need to get in debate about that, because with all due respect, I think the commission's job is more than just to protect the citizens, it's protect businesses that pay a lot of taxes in this community
No, I think
and do a lot of things. I don't think,
Even the West-
I agree, let me finish. I agree
Provide health and
that you
safety
should
to
protect
citizens.
citizens.
I mean, the
You
West
can't do where everybody else
Constitution
processes.
says provide health and
Appreciate
safety to the
you all looking at me and
citizens.
giving the attention to those concepts.
Well, I will say, there are citizens who have favorable gas leases out there that want the oil and gas to flow, so they'll get the royalty and get the compensation, which is the benefit of the lease that they entered into. They may not be here right now. You have a very aggressive group, and that's fine. I applaud you for that. You're participating in your government. But you're not, just because you have thoughts of how you are affected as a resident or citizen, doesn't mean that everyone within the county that's a resident